I don't. The mayor of Walkerville. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll have them speak. We'll let them know that we have the letters and reviewed them. If they have anything they want to add to the letters, they certainly can. Does that sound okay? Yeah, I think so. Get them in the record. Just to let you know, the meeting is supposed to start at 5:30. We are waiting for another member of the board, John Reese, to show up. If John doesn't show up, we could still proceed with tonight's meeting because we would have a quorum of 4, but each individual applicant would have the opportunity of continuing their hearing until the next scheduled meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment, because it does take 4 votes for application to prevail. It has to be 4 in favor, otherwise it fails. 3 to 1 doesn't do it. So a lot of people would rather take their chances with more members being present. But we'll wait on John to see if he shows up. We sent Robin out to track him down, going up to Walkerville to get him, so good luck to her. Yes, sir. 6 months to do it? It's 6 months and a substantial change. Yeah. If it's the exact same application, it'll have to wait 6 months. If you make a change to it, it can be sooner. Would that be correct, Dylan? Sort of, maybe. He'll let you know afterwards. It's not coming? Okay. I have just been advised that John Reese is not coming to the meeting tonight. That means we only will have 4 members, which, as I indicated to you previously, is a quorum, and we could make a decision with regard to each application tonight. But that would require that all 4 of us vote in favor of the application. That being the case, each applicant has the opportunity of waiting until our next regularly scheduled meeting, at which time we can hear the application and make a decision on it. But that's the option of the applicant. So I will now call the meeting to order, since it's sometime past 5:30 of this advertised time of day for the meeting of the Butte-Silver County Board of Adjustment. I would first like to introduce the staff. The gentleman sitting at the table here is Dylan Pipinich. On Dylan's left, Dylan is the planning director. On Dylan's left is Joella Thomas. She's the planning technician. Directly across from Joella is Elizabeth Lila Osborne, the senior planner. And on Lila's left is Robin Smith, and she's the administrative assistant, who kind of will be keeping track of everything tonight and do the minutes and keep everything running as it should be. I now would like to introduce the board. On my far left is Garrett Craig. On my far right is Tyler Schaefer. Next to Tyler is Todd Collins. My name is Dave Wing, and I will be chairing the meeting tonight. So first matter on our agenda is special use application 1322-quadruple zeros 13. Special use application by Sunshine Welsh. Is Ms. Welsh present? Excuse me, ma'am, if you could come forward. Is the microphone on? There you go. I'm sorry.
Would I be able to opt into next month's meeting?
That is your option, yes. I was going to ask you that question. And if you want to wait until next month, you certainly have that right.
Yes, please, I would like to.
Okay. Do we know when the meeting is next month? Just to give you a date. Next year even, isn't it? Yeah. The next meeting will be January the 19th, which would also be a Thursday.
Okay.
And you wish to opt to postpone your hearing until next month, is that correct?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. The next meeting on the agenda then following that is variance application number 22-02, an application by Kurt Dofflinger. Is Mr. Dofflinger present? Is that you, sir? Yeah, could you come forward, please? Would you like to continue with tonight's meeting, your application?
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to go forward.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Then we have a
This presentation is for variance application 22-2. The proposal is to construct a 2-family residence, 47 feet by 53 square feet, not square, on a 60 by 122 foot lot. It's a parcel of land in the R3 zone, and it requests to vary from the 75-foot minimum lot width requirement for 2-family residences, the 7,500 square foot minimum lot area requirement for 2-family residences, and the 10-foot minimum side yard requirement for 2-family residences in the R3 zone. A little bit of background here. This exact project was granted a variance in 2019, The stipulations of that approval, though, stated that a location improvement permit, which would be something like a building permit, excavation permit, stormwater permit, or something like it, must be obtained within 12 months. And for this particular variance, it was not. So it expired. Staff believes it would be most relevant here to evaluate whether any changes have occurred in the proposal or in the location of the proposal which would alter the already evaluated criteria. Here's an image of the zoning, R3 and then some R2 to the south. And here's an aerial image. And then the next slides are just some pictures of the space itself. It's this empty part of the lot next to the duplex here, which was constructed by the same applicant, also by a variance granted in 2019. And I believe the proposed one would look very similar. And here's an image of the site plan. So very similar to the other duplex that you can see here right to the north. So in 2019, the variance review criteria were evaluated by the Zoning Board of Adjustment. The board voted to grant a variance to construct the duplex with the 8-foot setback and the 5-foot setback proposed for side yards and on a 7,320 square foot lot. There have been no changes to the proposal or to the immediate neighborhood or the circumstances of the proposal since, except an almost identical duplex, which was granted the variance in 2019 to be constructed by the same applicant. The objective of the evaluation of this variance for a proposal which was once granted approval in 2019 is not to reevaluate each criteria as if that has not been done before, but to evaluate whether there have been any changes to the plans, surroundings, or circumstances which would alter the original decision. There have been no significant changes, therefore staff recommends approval of variance 22-2. And there are some conditions listed on the staff report. They're very standard. And that's all.
Thank you, Lila. Mr. Dofflinger, would you care to come forward and add anything that you feel we should consider when reviewing your application?
Nothing really, Mr. Chair. When there were two vacant lots together, and of course the variants were identical for both lots because the projects were just going to be a carbon copy of each other. On that approval, we were able to finish that first duplex, but unfortunately due to the event of COVID in 2020, we put the project on hold, but we are prepared to move forward again with approval of the variances.
Okay. And the staff has recommended approval, but there are some standard conditions associated with it. Have you reviewed those conditions?
I have.
And they're acceptable to you?
Of course, yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Is there anybody present that would care to speak in support of this application? Yes, if you folks could come forward and identify yourselves. And maybe just speak one at a time, too. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Tim Shea, and I live in the 400 block where this construction's going to go on. We're all for it, no
Okay.
problem. The only issues that we have is the conditions that the surrounding areas were left in. Behind the building that's there now, and of course all the mess that's on the lot, and part of the sidewalks buried on Gold Street that was done by the contractor that was doing the excavating. You know, they just leveled off the back and cut down the trees and just buried them in the property, and they're still showing on the back side of the alley. We would just like to have the mess cleaned up. One other thing that's there is a noxious weed. It's a matrimonial vine, it's called. And it is a noxious weed,
Okay.
and it's very large. And it's continues to this day to migrate. All directions up the, we live north of that. Yeah. And again, we're just saying, nice building that was put up. You know, we would just like to, the aesthetics of the surrounding property taken care of. I mean, is knapweed filled, everything. You know, we would just like that taken care of, or addressed, you know. So, do you want,
We live right across.
And your name, ma'am?
Oh, Janet Shea.
Okay.
We live at 406 South Jackson Street, so just 2 doors up. Anyway, the hospital is right across the street, the big parking lot, and they've done a lot of landscaping. They've done a lot of things to make that neighborhood look really, really nice. You know, there's some issues on the other side of Gold Street, but that's not what we're here for tonight. But the weeds are terrible. They go up the alley, and like I said, when these guys left, they just left it a mess, and it's a hazard. They dumped all the stuff off onto the sidewalk. On Gold Street, that picture showed that there was nothing on that sidewalk, but it's full of dirt and nasty stuff, and you can't walk down the sidewalk. So if you want to go for a walk, you got to walk down the middle of the street. So we'd need some landscaping or something to make it fit in with the rest of the neighborhood. I mean, our whole area property is completely landscaped, trees. There's no weeds in our yard, so I wouldn't be in real favor if they're not gonna make it look like the rest of the neighborhood. So that's my point.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
nothing else, thank you.
You bet. Is there anybody else who would care to speak in support of this application? Hearing nobody, I'll ask if there's anybody that would care to speak against the application. Hearing nobody, and this is a little bit unusual, but I'll ask Mr. Dofflinger to come forward in sort of a form of rebuttal and address the concerns that were raised by the Shays.
Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Shea. So one of the things on the next duplex is when you look at the side, there's a retaining wall. The retaining wall's always been there, probably since the last building that was there, I don't know how many decades ago. So we're going to extend that retaining wall so the dirt can come up and probably work it.
Okay, we really don't want to colloquy between everybody. If you just address the concerns and
Yes.
tell us what your plans are.
So we're going to plan on extending the retaining wall almost to the alley, and that way pushing the dirt back up and being able to finish that north side. To address the back of the project would be the east side of the buildings. We do have this summer, we do have a project to clean that up and probably build a walkway down to the alley.
Okay, so do the landscaping and take care of the noxious weeds?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, we had those sprayed this summer again, but it's hard to stay ahead of them.
hard to stay ahead of them sometimes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
It's already been established that nobody is speaking against the application, so I'll close the public portion of the meeting and open it for board consideration.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, staff, and special guests tonight, I almost 100% completely echo Mr. and Mrs. Shea's comments. I do happen to drive by this on a near daily basis. The duplex is beautiful. Mr. Doffinger did a wonderful job with that. I wish we could build those all over uptown in every empty lot we have, maybe even tear down a few. Don't tell anyone that, but it's really nice. The landscaping is sorely lacking though, and it has caught my attention more than a few times just from casually driving by. We've got this beautiful duplex and it's almost, especially during the springtime, sitting in a mud pit, with all the dirt around it. I have noticed the weeds too, which is kind of odd that I'm just pretty much repeating all of this stuff, but all of this stuff has came to my attention too just by driving by this, and so I would just ask if we could please, Mr. Doffinger, please focus on putting some landscaping in. I would just hate to see such a nice place not be as nice as it potentially could. And I know we've been very supportive of your applications in the past. You've done a great job, and you tended to always do what we've asked you, and I would just ask as a good neighbor, please, if we could get the weeds handled and just make that look as nice as possible so that it could appease your neighbors, I guess, for lack of a better term. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
Other than that, I'm in support of everything, so.
Okay.
Mr.
Any-
Chairman,
Yes, Todd.
I'll ask Dylan or Lila, was there any type of a weed bond requested for this application, or should there be possibly?
Yes, Mr. Shea. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Collins. No, the only thing that was evaluated in the staff report in both, well, in the first scenario and now, was the specific impacts related to the variances requested. You know, nothing, there isn't landscaping requirements in residential areas. So none of that was evaluated at that time. We specifically looked at the 3 criteria for the variances requested, and that is it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Todd. Any further comments with regard to this matter? Okay. All right, then we can proceed to voting. We do need a motion before we can do that.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we approve variance 22 dash, I think 5 zeros in a 2.
That's what I count, Tyler.
A lot of
5 of
zeros
them.
and bad eyes. That we approve that with conditions as outlined in the staff report, and just have it on the record, we are kind of asking for some landscaping, but I don't know if we need to make it a condition at this time.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the application. We all now can vote with regard to that matter. Thanks, Carol. All 4 votes are for the motion, so that means that your application has been approved. You will be receiving a letter from the planning staff to that effect. Thank you and good luck on your project. The next matter on our agenda is variance application 22, 5 zeros and a 3, an application by Escudado Interests. Is representatives of Escudado present? Okay. If you could come forward, I would like to ask if you wish to proceed with the application and the hearing tonight, or if you wish to postpone it until our next scheduled meeting.
We're prepared to go forward this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to clarify that I had Lila run down and grab the bylaws. The requirement for a rehearing is 6 months and a substantial change,
And a
not or
substantial change,
substantial
okay.
change, just to clarify.
Thank you for that clarification. Lila?
Thank you. This presentation is for variance application 22-3, which proposes to reduce the 15-foot required side yard setback for corner lots in the C2 Community Commercial Zone as specified in the Butte-Silver Municipal Code to 0 feet. The applicants propose to construct a 36.5-foot by 39-foot drive-through oil change facility on a lot approximately 38 feet wide and 122 feet long. Here's a site plan, and I have a zoomed in version in a few slides, but the proposed traffic flow here is to come in off of Harvard and then to exit through this easement with the auto zone and back out onto Harrison this way. The C2 zone requires that corner commercial lots along the side which flanks a public street provide a side yard setback not less than 15 feet. The applicant's request to reduce this setback requirement to 0 feet. The request to vary from a requirement of the zoning ordinance requires review and approval from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. There are 3 criteria outlined by the Montana Supreme Court for evaluating variance applications. Here's the zoning. We're in the C2 Community Commercial District. And here's a very zoomed out aerial image. We're by the old Hardee's, the AutoZone, Safeway, Ace is over here also. And then here are some images of the lot itself. And here's that zoomed in site plan, which should be in your staff reports too. The first criteria, a variance must not be contrary to the public interest. It's the intent of the zoning ordinance to protect and promote public health, safety, and general welfare for people living and operating in Butte-Silver. The ordinance safeguards public interests by preventing building congestion, creating uniformity within different zoning districts, and preventing uses of land which may be incompatible with or have a negative impact on surrounding property owners. There are 2 primary intents behind the 15-foot required side yard setback for corner commercial lots. The first is to provide for a specific and consistent look and feel of commercial development in the zone by creating space for light and air around streets and corners. And the second is to maintain the vision clearance triangle by setting buildings back from side streets. The proposed 0-foot setback would not give consideration to the intent of providing light and air along side streets and corners and would also impact the vision clearance triangle. Here's an illustration of the vision clearance triangle, which is a health and safety measure, which is described in the ordinance. The proposed building is 24 feet from the property line closest to Harrison and 0 feet from the property line closest to Harvard, which just situates it within the vision clearance triangle. This intersection is part of a high-traffic, busy area on Harrison, and staff believes that adding this intensive use on a lot this size with no side yard setback, which interferes with the public health and safety vision clearance, would be contrary to public interest. The second criteria is a literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance must result in unnecessary hardship owing to conditions unique to the property. The facts of hardship stated in this application: the existing lot is approximately 0.1 acres and only 38 feet wide. There are few uses, if any, that are able to fit on the site and maintain conformance with the current code. We are only proposing a 1,423 square foot oil change facility, but cannot reduce the width of our building to 18 feet to accommodate the side yard setback requirement. The area of the parcel in question is approximately 4,750 square feet. Of the currently 851 total parcels zoned C2 in Butte-Silver, 224 of them are smaller than 5,000 square feet. In other words, over a quarter are this size or smaller. While there may be nonconformities existing on some of these lots, the size of the parcel is not necessarily unique to the zone. What would create a hardship, however, is that the lot is 38 feet wide and located on a corner, implicating that required 15-foot side yard setback, which would render almost 40% of the lot unbuildable. So, as defined by the Supreme Court, there is a hardship in this case. The third criteria, the spirit of the zoning ordinance must be observed and substantial justice done. The spirit of the ordinance is to permit reasonable use of private property while requiring businesses and residents to develop their properties in a way that does not compromise public interest. Regarding the ability of the variance request to maintain the spirit of the ordinance, the applicants are proposing to reduce the required setback of 15 feet to 0. As stated previously, the intents of this requirement are to provide for a specific look and feel of commercial development in the zone by creating space for light and air around streets, and to maintain appropriate vision clearance at street corners for traffic safety. While the imposition of a 15-foot setback would make development difficult because of the hardship stated before, and some reduction might be warranted, the proposed 0-foot side yard setback would not meet the intent of the requirement to any degree and would not be within the spirit of the ordinance. Substantial justice. When considering if substantial justice has been done regarding a zoning decision, there are two main questions to ask. Would literal interpretation of the provisions of this chapter deprive the applicants of rights commonly enjoyed by other tracts in the same district? And two, would approving the variance request grant the applicants any special privilege that is denied by this chapter to other land in the same zoning district? In this instance, a 15-foot required setback may be too restrictive to allow reasonable use of the property. However, providing no setback does not consider adequate light and air and interferes with the vision clearance triangle. It may be special consideration to completely eliminate the required side yard setback for this specific development proposal. The proposal may simply be too large for the parcel in question. In this case, the board is not to evaluate whether an oil change shop would generally be an appropriate development because it is already a permitted use in the zone. The question before the board is whether the details of the proposed development meet the community goals and objectives that the ordinance protects. As discussed, the required variance to reduce the 15-foot required side yard setback to 0 does not meet all of the Supreme Court's criteria for a variance. While the width of this corner lot may present a hardship, the proposal to provide no setback is still contrary to the public interest, as it does not provide any consideration to the intent of the provision and interferes with the vision clearance triangle and is not in the spirit of the zoning ordinance. Therefore, staff recommends that the board deny variance application 22-3. Thank you.
Thank you, Lila. Would the applicant care to step forward and present his case or your case in support of the application?
Mr. Chairman, do we have a chance to ask questions of staff really quick, or is that later?
No, we can go ahead and do that right now, Tyler.
Okay, is this,
Do you have any
I thought it was
questions?
normal, I haven't been here in a while, but I thought that was normally what we did, but.
Normally
Miss-
we do that.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I just do have a couple things on this. Just for clarification, Ms. Osborne, the whole setback issue is with Harvard, right? It's Harvard. Harvard, okay, I'm just looking at the map, it says Harvard. Okay, that's where our issue with the setback, it's not Harrison or, correct? It's just that, okay. And then, if this were something that possibly goes forward, I see where the sidewalk kind of comes around there. Would there be room still to extend the sidewalk down Harvard to the west without, that doesn't change any of that setback or that 0-foot setback, correct?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Schaefer, a couple things here. The applicants have requested a variance from the side yard setback requirement. I would like to note, and as Lila has mentioned in her staff report, that it also obstructs the vision clearance triangle. That is a separate section of the zoning ordinance, and the applicants did not request to vary from the vision clearance triangle requirement in their application. So that's kind of to address your first question. Your second question is sidewalk, curb and gutter is a zoning requirement along all property lines adjacent to public streets. That is indicated on their site plan, and as they have not requested a variance from that, then it would be required and reviewed at building permit.
Okay. And that wouldn't change where the building is set or anything?
No, so the only thing that we're evaluating at this time is the specific request to vary from that section of the zoning ordinance of the 15-foot required setback.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pipinich.
Thank you, Mr.
Ms.
Pipinich.
Osborne.
Do any other board members have any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Collins?
and Ms. Osborne or Dylan, I'm looking at this map. Can you explain the traffic flow, how this is gonna work? Are they gonna pull in and then back all the way out? Or is there a curb cut on Harvard Avenue? You know, like an entrance and an exit? It's really unclear to me. I apologize.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Collins, So the Public Works Ordinance has specifications for how close, or I should say far from corners that entrances and exits must be, and this lot wouldn't possibly make that. So they have an agreement with AutoZone that they'd enter from Harvard, from the alley really, and then they'd go through the building, which has 2 oil change bays, and then they would go onto the parking lot of AutoZone and exit onto Harrison that way, if
Okay.
you see that. And I think that AutoZone would be moving their trash can over here, also with an easement agreement with the proposal.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Lila. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. And I myself also have a question and just a matter of clarification. I haven't heard it mentioned yet, but that particular property is being used by Florence Coffee Shop, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that is the current use of the property.
Okay. All right, thank you. Now the applicant can present his case in support of the application.
Good evening. Thanks for the presentation.
Okay, thank you, sir. And
My
may
name's
I-
Deb.
Good,
Oh.
thank you.
Did you have something else?
Yeah, just Neil.
Pardon?
Your name, sir?
Oh, yeah. My name's Devin Ferris, company Estacado Interests. This is my business partner, Matt Peterson, and we are proposing Take 5 oil change, which is a quick lube facility here on this property at the corner of Harvard and Harrison. We will be the business owners, so we're the franchisee for Take 5 oil change, which is a national concept across the United States, but it'll be the first one in Montana, and we'll be the franchisees for the entire state of Montana. So this is our first location that we're looking at. And of course, as Lila mentioned, the variance request is a side setback to Harvard there. Couple of challenges with this lot. Of course, it's very narrow. It's about 1/10 of an acre actually as well, so around 4,000 square feet. And currently there's 2 curb cuts on Harvard. So if you can kind of see that banana-shaped curb there where the car's parked right under the V where it says Harvard. My site plan guy got that wrong, but there's 2 curb cuts. So there's one on the west side, which we're gonna kind of keep using, but we're gonna narrow it. And then there's one on the east side of the banana curb as well. And that one is gonna be shut down. Florence Coffee is actually moving across the street, as I'm sure many of you well know. That curb cut is going to be, I mean, it's basically grandfathered in right now, so it's going to go away as soon as they leave the lot anyways. If anyone else came in to apply, whether it be us or anybody else, that's going to be shut off, which presents another challenge for the lot because it's kind of hard to get in and out of it with how narrow it is if you're going to put a building on it if there's only one curb cut. So the way we remedied that was getting with AutoZone next door, and to answer your question, so you'll pull in off of Harvard, come through the building. It's a quick lube oil change. It takes about 10 minutes. The customer stays in their car, and then they exit out in the front where it says 24 there, come south. They can either exit there on the Harrison or come around the south side of AutoZone and hit the light. I know there was a mention of the visibility triangle, and we actually have not had a chance to bring this up with staff yet. And I don't necessarily think it's their fault because it is pretty confusing, but I wanted to point something out. So the visibility triangle, if you could go back to that slide, please, is 25 feet measured from the front property line. So essentially you take the corner and you go each way 25 feet, and that connects and creates a visibility triangle. And the requirement in the code's 25 feet. And if you don't mind going back to our site plan, sorry. So there's the 24-foot measurement is actually from the curb, our drive aisle there. Our property line's actually another 3 feet or 4 feet. Actually, I have a measurement here, and I can pass this around. I measured it before I came here, but it actually is, we're actually set back 29 feet from the property line, not 24 feet. So I just wanted to clear that up because I know there was a safety concern with the encroachment into the visibility triangle. And I'm gonna have Matt kind of pass those around. Yeah, we only have 2, but
Hand it to
he'll pass it around, then you guys can take a look at it. If you want to give one to staff maybe as well.
Staff, and they could give it to us.
with that being one of the main concerns, we wanted to make sure and address that. Like I said, it is confusing because our curb right there is 24 feet from the building, the drive aisle, but there will be a landscape area of about 5 foot of width there on the east side of that 24-foot drive aisle that will actually make our building 29 feet from the property line. And then the light and air comment, I understand that. I think in this particular instance, the light and air, I mean, Harvard, and we're building on a corner lot, so I personally think there's plenty of light and air to come around the north side of that building, but I'm not here to specifically argue that. A couple of our store stats I wanted to mention. We'll have around 10 employees. We're making about $1.5 million investment between the land purchase and the building that we're going to be building, which is a 2-bay oil change facility. So there'll be 2 bay doors facing east and west. And then we're projecting to do about $1 million a year in annual sales. We changed our site plan a couple times after we had a pre-development meeting with the city. Initially, we did show that we were going to be exiting after the cars go through the building back onto Harvard Avenue. And I understand that there is a driveway spacing and setback requirement there. So at that point, we scratched the exit there onto Harvard and got this agreement established with AutoZone to be able to exit through their property. A couple of other concerns that were mentioned in our pre-dev meeting and just general discussions with staff were parking. We don't have any parking shown on our site plan. I'm sure you guys recognize that when you looked at it. We are in agreement with the Ace Hardware owner who actually submitted a letter in favor of our application this evening. We're in agreement with him to share parking on his property. We're required to have 5 spaces per code, and we'll have those off-site, so it'll be shared parking, but it'll be right behind our lot there. And then the landscaping, there was a question on whether or not we were going to be able to meet the landscaping, and we hashed that out with the staff this week that we are able to meet the landscaping requirements as far as area goes, and we fully intend on putting the amount of trees and irrigation that are required to be installed with our construction. And then to answer the question on the sidewalk, we will be carrying the sidewalk west down Harvard to the edge of our property. So we'll be putting that improvement in as part of our construction. Other than that, we're really excited about this opportunity and to be able to open our first store here in Butte, and just look forward to being a part of your guys' community. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. Any board members have any questions of the applicant at this time?
I guess just, Mr. Chairman, I guess one just kind of basic question I have is, what is your plan? It sounds like you have submitted some landscaping stuff to the staff, but what does that entail? Are you trees, are you bushes?
So all that we discussed with staff at this point was the area requirement to make sure that we would be able to meet the square footage. So there's a calculation, you take the lot, subtract the building area, the lot area minus the building area, and then there's a certain percentage that you're supposed to meet of landscaping there, and we do actually meet that area. And then there's also, the code takes it a step further to specify how many trees are required to be planted. So we'll put as many trees are required by code in there. It is a little tight, but we want it to look nice. It's our business at the end of the day, and we want folks to patronize it. So we'll be putting in trees along Harvard there, and then probably some shrubs there along Harrison.
Thank you.
We don't want to put a lot of trees on Harrison, of course, because
No, you don't want to block everything.
and you talk about the visibility triangle. I mean that.
No,
could
yeah,
make
that's
things
why I'm
dangerous.
just curious, just trying to kind of put it all in my head. So thank you, I
Of
appreciate
course.
that.
Any other board members have any questions of the applicant? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
Mr. Collins has a question.
do you store waste oil on the property? Will that it'll be handled?
Yeah,
I guess, and-
there's actually, so Take 5 is different than a lot of oil changes in that respect. Some people put it in a tank in the ground and, like you said, store it. We actually have an above ground reservoir that a truck comes and pumps on a regular basis. So there won't be any long-term oil storage there. It'll be pumped out on a regular basis by a truck that hooks up to the side of the building.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, is there anybody present that would care to speak in support of this application? Mr. Joseph?
Good evening, folks. Thank you. My name's Frank Joseph. My father owns the lot in question. He passed away last year. We're trying to sell the estate. Folks, these guys are real deal. They're serious about what they want to do. They want to come into this community. Basically, all I can tell you is I've had a great relationship with the Tamlins and Florence Coffee for 15, 20 years going forward. They're moving next door, folks, before and after. If they leave next door, I've got a coffee lot. That's what I have. And what are you gonna have? You're either gonna have a vacant lot there, or you're gonna have me up here applying to get food trucks in there. That's not gonna look good for Harrison Avenue. I'm just saying this, and I'm not threatening anybody or trying to, it is what it is. The facts are the facts. The lot is a small lot. These gentlemen have a great idea to put a good business in there to bring $1 million plus into Butte, into Silver Bow County. Otherwise, if they leave, Tamlins are going next door, I'm gonna have an empty lot. I can't put another coffee lot in there and compete with Tamlins. So it's gonna either be vacant, or we're gonna sell it to somebody who's gonna use it for storage or something else. So I think it's a positive use. If you look down there right now, when AutoZone went in, air and light went gone. If you're worried about the air and light, I'm just gonna say, take a look at AutoZone. That blocked a lot of light off of that lot. Everybody's worked. We've all worked it. The Tamlins have had a successful business down there, and there's no reason to believe that Estacado Interest can't do the same thing with an oil change. Folks, I'm just saying, if we don't do this, we're gonna be back before you someplace looking for something to wedge in there, because I cannot afford to leave it alone. And I don't think we want that vacant lot in Butte. I don't, right there. That's a prime location on Harrison Avenue. I think it's silly if we miss this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Is there anybody else who would care to speak in support of this application? Yes, sir, if you could come forward and identify yourself.
I'm Jeff Tamblin. I own the Florence Coffee Shop. Currently sits there. Like Frank said, we've been there for 15 years. We've outgrown the spot, so we're moving just next door. And seems like a great use for this little lot. You know, we've done well there. No reason to think these guys won't do the same. So here to be in support of that. That's it.
Can I ask you a question, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of traffic there? Yeah,
Yes.
a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we, with our new one, we anticipated a little bit more traffic too, so. But, no, so I think it's a good spot for an oil change, no one to compete directly with us, so. And the timing's just perfect because, we purchased Hardee's 2 years ago, not fully knowing what we were gonna do, but circumstances have come about that now we know, and we're full steam ahead.
Okay.
And these guys following right behind us.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Is there anybody? Yes, sir, if you could come forward and identify yourself.
Greetings, Mr. Chairman, board, staff. My name's Corey Markovich, business owner and resident here in Butte. I'm here to support the proposed development and their proposed variance. Some of the points that have already been made, it's a challenging lot. They've come up with a real creative use and established easements with the neighbor to use an existing curb cut on Harrison. They take away a curb cut out into Harvard near the corner that's challenging on that corner. They take a lot that, as Frank pointed out, it's a narrow lot. It's going to be a challenge to fit a business in there. Butte's home for us. We believe in what's good for Butte is good for us. And anytime we've got business with a solid plan to come in and invest money in Butte, we think that's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Markovich. Is there anybody else who would care to speak in support? Yes, ma'am, if you could come forward and identify yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Holly Carpenter, and I work with Clearwater Credit Union. I have actually been working with Devin and Matt recently on this project. I've seen the kind of businessmen they are, and they're totally legitimate. They're bringing a good business to Butte. They've done a great job in the past in their other businesses, and I think this, just like the guy said before me, I think it's a great use of this lot. I don't see anything else, like Frank said, going in there besides a coffee hut. So I think that we'd be making a real good decision letting these guys come into Butte with this oil change company.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would care to speak in support of this application?
Mr. Chairman, I have some letters of support.
Yes, if you could read those, please.
The first one is from Mr. Matthew Dowdell. Dear Zoning Board of Adjustment, I'm writing in support of the above-mentioned variance case for the proposed Take 5 oil change development located at 2000 Harvard Ave. I am an owner in the Ace Hardware property and business located at 2607 Harrison, which is adjacent to the subject property on the west side. The Take 5 oil change proposed by Estacado Interests will be a nice complement to surrounding businesses and a great addition to the community as a whole. I ask that you strongly consider the approval of this variance application. If you should have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me, and there's a number listed. I have another letter from Mr. Corey Markovich. Just, want me to read it? Okay, I think he about covered that.
We can waive the reading then.
And then another letter from Ms. Christy Markovich. Dear Zoning Board of Adjustment, I'm writing in support of the above-mentioned variance case for the proposed Take 5 oil change development located at 2000 Harvard Ave. I'm a real estate broker and property owner in Butte, Montana. The Take 5 oil change proposed by Estacado Interests will be a nice complement to surrounding businesses and a great addition for the community as a whole. I ask that you strongly consider the approval of this variance application. If you should have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me at the number listed. Thank you.
Thank you, Lila. Is there anybody else who would care to speak in support of the application? Then I will now ask if there's anybody that would care to speak against the application. Okay, hearing nobody, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and open it for board discussion.
Mr. Chairman, the way I look at this is that lot is very difficult to do anything with. I think we're all aware of that. It's obvious. Florence Coffee has been there forever. It's obviously very popular. If you drive by there at 8 a.m., 8:30 a.m., anytime around that time, there is usually traffic backed out onto Harvard, backed out onto Harrison, which is just a testament to how much people love that business. So congestion-wise, I think we're actually looking at a net positive on this with less congestion. Which sounds weird because you would think an oil change lube facility is going to have a lot more congestion than a coffee shop, but these Florence coffees tend to be a lot busier than most coffee shops that we run into in our daily lives. So I think that's a net positive. I initially had concerns with this exiting out onto Harrison. Now we see that it's actually exiting out into AutoZone, and then going to use an existing curb cut on there. We are going to be able to remove a curb cut onto Harrison, which I do think is an advantage, especially on that corner. And I know this isn't ideal. I know it's, it obviously has been recommended denial from the staff, and I understand where they're coming from. But reiterating what Mr. Joseph had to say, what else is going to happen here? I mean, I've been racking my brain for, a week or two on this, just thinking, what else could you do there? I haven't came up with anything. People I've talked to haven't came up with anything. We're very close to having some nice development in the Hardee's building, which we've had trouble having in a long time. The Tamlins are going to make that into a really nice location, and it's going to complement this. And I would think that the gentlemen proposing this loop facility are going to do a nice job too. I mean, they're going to build a brand new building in our town, and they're trying to do what I tend to think is the best they can with what they have to work with there, which isn't much. So that being said, I am in support of this, semi-reluctantly, but I just cannot think of anything else we would do here. And that being said, I am in support of it as drawn. If other members of the board, you know, agree or what, I guess we can all hash that out later, but if it is going the direction of approval, we do need to, you know, obviously get some conditions in there for that stuff. But that's my 2 cents, and I would love to hear what everyone else has to think too.
I agree with your analysis, Mr. Schaefer. Any further comments?
Yeah, I came into this meeting with some pretty serious reservations. I looked at the property, and frankly, I don't know how you can do an oil loop business with, you know, less than 1,500 square feet, but I think these gentlemen can get it done. It is I think it's a good use for the lot. They have done their homework. They've figured out how to get the traffic to flow. You know, talked with other business owners and kind of finagled that around. I hope they've got a long-term agreement, just so that something doesn't blow up, but that's their problem. Yeah, I think that I would probably support this.
Thank you. Garrett, do you have any comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this one. You know, I think they have a good proposal for the space that they were given. It is a very small lot, but I do worry about congestion. You know, we saw how much congestion there was with Florence Coffee there. You know, between vision clearance, you know, off-site parking, landscaping, and then just overall the entering and exiting congestion. I just question if this, you know, it's a great project, but I just question if the overall size of the lot's too small for what they're proposing.
Yeah, I had concerns about congestion too, but it seems like there'll be less traffic because Florence traffic certainly had a lot of it, probably no doubt due to the quality of their product. But there were a lot of people there, a lot of cars. It seems like this would be less cars. So I see a net reduction like Tyler does of congestion and traffic. Okay. Well, we've talked about it. Is anybody in a position to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I am. I'll make a motion. We approve variance application 22-3 with zeros in front of it.
With a bunch of zeros?
The 5 zeros, oh, my eyes are bad. But I believe as a board here, we gotta work with staff to get at least some conditions put into something before we.
What are you thinking about in terms of conditions?
Well, I think we have our general conditions of landscaping and sidewalk, curb and gutter and stuff that
Right.
falls under the general ordinance, but.
Signage.
Signage stuff, low glare lighting, you know, the typical stuff we look for in these things. It is difficult when staff does recommend denial because we do gotta go back and do this. So if there's any way we could maybe get some help on getting conditions if we're all on the same page, I guess. I mean, if we're not, I guess it's a moot point, but.
Yeah, we would need conditions. I think the sidewalk has been taken care of anymore with the ordinances requiring it.
So what would we
don't have to impose a condition
need?
in
I
that
mean,
regard.
we gotta have this stuff for building permits, so you know, the typical.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Schaefer. Yeah, we normally do have conditions on these. However, all of those are already requirements of the
Are they?
zoning
Okay.
ordinance. So, I mean, the only thing that they would be able to vary from the zoning ordinance upon, if you decide to approve this application, is that side yard setback.
Okay.
Other than that, landscaping, parking,
It's
all of that.
that
You
makes
may
sense.
want to consider something about, well, that doesn't even, I'm sorry, I'm thinking out loud a little bit, but,
That's okay.
you know, really all that we're evaluating is that side
Yeah.
yard setback, so any conditions of
Valid
approval
point.
should be to minimize impacts of the 0-foot setback on Harvard Avenue, and, you know, I can't think of any that would do such a thing. You know, if that makes any sense, the
It's
conditions of
hard, yeah,
approval should be
every
to,
bit of this is difficult.
it should be to minimize the impacts of varying from the ordinance. The rest of the things
Okay.
that, you know, if you condition it or not, they'll still be required to get a building permit and follow
Okay.
those. So sometimes they're nice reminders, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
okay, that's understandable, Mr. Pippinich, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do have another question for Mr. Pippenet. So along with all of this, everybody's looking at everybody. Anyway, hard surface in the back, is that something that has to be done? Of course, you know, are they gonna pave that back there, where they come in off of Harvard Avenue? And there's another thing that entered my mind was, runoff water. That seems to be a big thing
I think that
nowadays. Could you address that, please?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Collins. Yeah, so there's not a paving requirement other than parking lots, and as they stated, they plan on sharing some parking, and then there is a stormwater requirement, or they would be required to provide a stormwater management plan or a variance from the standards through our Public Works Department. But that is also outside of zoning. So these are just all things that they would have to do as a development process.
That would just
Anyway,
naturally happen.
Yeah, really all that we're looking here is that, and especially now that they're 29 feet back and not 24 feet back, you're just evaluating the criteria for that side yard setback.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question for Mr. Pippinich as well.
Yes, Garrett.
Mr. Pippinich, was there any evaluation in terms of minimizing the setback while it still be a variance? You know, not having a 0-foot setback, but, you know, perhaps a 10-foot setback or 8-foot setback that maybe would help with the vision clearance triangle while still allow the applicants to build their proposed establishment.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Craig, we've had a couple pre-application meetings, which is typical of commercial developments like this. We usually like to sit down with fire department, public works department, all that with the developers. We discussed this site plan a couple times, but you know, concerns were given at that time, and the best that I can state is this is the application that was put forward. That may be a better question for the applicant, is if they can do something like that, but to my knowledge, I don't believe that they ever proposed anything different than this width of the building, at least to staff.
Would you like the applicant to step forward? I'll give you the opportunity to ask him that question.
Yes, please, if you would.
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Craig, the slimmest we're able to build the building is 36.5 feet. That's to allocate for the pit, the areas in between the pit and the store area within the building, which would entail a small manager's office and a bathroom to meet ADA requirements. And as the planning director stated, this was our second or third rendition of the site. We came back, I would say, fighting every time. Every challenge we've had, we've been able to tackle, from the access to the parking. The proposed development we have here, I mean, it's really taken a village from the Ace Hardware owner granting us the parking to Ed Lebheimer, who owns the AutoZone property, granting us the cross-access. AutoZone entailing with the approval as well. And then, you know, Jeff Tamblin, he had the opportunity to purchase this property as well. He was given the first right, and he believed in what we were proposing here. Our development also is only, so we run a lot of analytics. The corporate concept that we are franchising, they have 850 units nationwide. They approve what our business plan is, and our business plan only entails seeing 30 some odd cars a day through that building within a 12-hour work period. So we've been talking a lot about the congestion that you see in the Florence. Major benefit to this development with the closure of that access point on Harvard closest to Harrison. As of right now, cars can pull in and out right there at the intersection, and that's why you see that congestion that backs up. What's great about the plan we've come up with, when these cars pull in off of Harvard and enter into the site, if there actually are 6 cars behind the building waiting in line, they can go south through the alley. That's a 20-foot wide alley. Parking space is 9 feet, so you can have two-way traffic through that alley in a worst-case scenario. So what's previously been discussed is, when the Florence goes away, that curb cut goes away. That curb cut's currently grandfathered with the business. A new business can't come in and utilize that curb cut. So you're really restrained with the traffic. And because of the cross access, we've been able to establish, there's 2 different entry and exit points on that AutoZone that we're now effectively able to utilize, when the property as it stands can only have 1. Other than that, while we're going for a 0-foot setback, we hope it'll be upwards of 4 or 6 inches setback, but we truly have to go property line to property line. But as far as the visibility clearance goes, we're 29 feet off of Harrison. We meet that visibility triangle that's required by code, and with 25 feet, a car is 18 feet long. So if there's a car at that stop sign on Harvard exiting onto Harrison, the car behind them will still be able to see traffic to their left and right. So we are no longer impeding on the safety of vehicles coming in and out of the site. Those are really all of my closing comments.
Thank you, sir. Any further discussion in view of the comments that we just received?
Mr. Chairman, I think I feel comfortable making a motion to approve variance application 22-5003. Yep.
So moved.
Seconded by yourself? Okay. We now vote. Meet you halfway there. All 4 votes are for the motion. That means that your application has been approved, and you will be receiving a letter from the planning staff to that effect. Good luck with your project.
Thank you. Dylan, do we have other business?
Any further business?
Adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, do we need to approve the minutes from the May and June? Seconded.